All right, so we're back with you, and I've got with me, well, my co-host is still here, luckily, and I've got Nikki, and I've got clinical psychologist Ms. McFarlane here with us. Thanks for coming in. I know it's past your bedtime, so I really appreciate you making the sacrifice. You see, this happens Trinidad and Tobago when you love people. When you love people, God just gives you an extra grace. So we want to talk this evening, sorry, about suicide and with the calls that I've been getting and from relatives who would have had nieces, cousins, sister, committing suicide when no one ever thought that they were dealing with something traumatic. And Nikki is here with us because she said to me that, someone in primary school, she said, she knew committed suicide and it stayed on her mind for years. Yeah. So we really, hope this evening you could enlighten us. What are the signs? We talk about, even though somebody may be bubbly and smiling all the time, how can you detect when something is wrong?
Yeah.
And just share with us.
Okay, well, right. So first I would say that normally suicide is accompanied by some sort of mental health. Yeah, right. Suicide is accompanied by a mental health struggle or a mental illness, right? So something like depression or anxiety or psychosis. And so therefore what we want to first look for is any signs of mental struggle. So things like crying a lot, withdrawing from others, seeming very anxious. So you can look at changes in behaviors, the withdrawal, probably even giving away things that they usually treasure, losing interest in things that they normally are interested in, sleeping too much or too little, eating too much or too little. You can also look at the changes in the way that they think. This person might become a lot more pessimistic. They might make statements that are sort of filled with guilt and worthlessness and hopelessness. They may actually say things like, I don't even know what my purpose is here anymore. Why am I still living? And it would be easier if I were dead, and things that people tend to brush off and say, don't talk like that. What nonsense is that? Right? So a lot of times there are the signs. Then there are also, of course, emotional changes. If this person seems very sad a lot.
So you're saying that if someone shows those signs, you're saying it's something mental?
Right. So our emotional health, our psychological health fluctuates every day. Different things happen to make us feel sad, angry, nervous, anxious, irritated, etc. Right? So what you'd want to notice then is not regular changes in mood and regular changes in behaviors, but changes that last for a long time and get progressively worse or progressively more, right? So your child is having a bad day and they withdraw to their rooms, they don't want to be bothered. That's fine. But if this child is withdrawing and locking themselves away from all of their friends, all of their family, not just mommy and daddy, because mommy and daddy don't understand anything, but everybody, they don't want to really communicate with people for a long period of time, then something a lot more than the usual is wrong. And that's a time to intervene and find out what's been going on. Children experience a lot of things that we don't realize they experience, from bullying to abuse to not fitting in to struggling with schoolwork, learning problems, or being perfectionistic and setting really high standards for themselves. Kids struggle with a lot of things that we don't recognize, and it's not until we sort of see some of these signs that they're struggling with something that we know to ask the question, you know?
My question would be primary school. Sometimes you may not understand what is going on, like Nikki shared with the person in primary school. What could we look for with a child in primary school to think that, Nikki, when did it happen? How did it happen?
Um, I believe I was probably somewhere in standard 2 or 3. and this person would have probably been a year ahead of us. And from what I recall, she set herself on fire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well,
And I remember, and I mean, at that time, there was no sort of, there was nobody that came in to do counseling with the children. There wasn't any sort of discussion. It was actually kind of hush hush, you know. Nobody really wanted, I mean, obviously nobody would want to give children details, right? But I remember thinking, trying to figure out why would she do this? You know, why on earth? And I mean, now as I'm older and I understand not only natural things, but I also understand spiritual things. I understand that, you know, there were probably major issues in her life that she obviously needed help with. But at that time, there was no sort of explanation or anything for the children. And I don't
so
think that any of her friends would have seen signs and be able to pick out signs at that time as children, right? So that obviously was somebody else that would have supposed to be able to look in and say, well, hey, this girl has a problem.
So exactly. So children at that age, it's difficult to say, well, you know, the peers could figure out what has been going wrong.
Right.
But one of the first telltale signs that the adults in the school, and I mean, her peers would have seen things that you would now recognize. Oh, wait, she really did kind of have some strange moods at times, or she really did this or that. But one of the first things you could kind of look for when a child is struggling is changes in their academic performance. So when a child is stressed or a child is not feeling safe, their cognitive abilities aren't as sharp. So they wouldn't be able to focus as well or for as long or perform or give the output that is expected of them. So you could start to look from there. Then of course you might see some behavior changes. The child might be very quiet. They may not engage during recess time as much as they used to, or they may engage quite a lot. So their behavior might be a little excessive because now they're looking for what we say, looking for attention. You know, so you will see some of these sort of changes in their behaviors. You might find that the child is very sensitive, crying a lot, because what could also be happening is at home, there could be a situation of abuse or something that the child doesn't want to go home to face. And at some point in time, that starts to sort of, I mean, undeniably, it would affect the child in such a way that they may feel uncared for, unloved, worthless, and that could lead to ideas of suicide. But also, if the child does have a mental illness like major depression, which doesn't have to stem from any kind of trauma or anything at home, or some sort of psychotic illness that makes them very impulsive, and then they start hearing or seeing about other people who have completed suicides, that could also be an influencing factor.
Hi, I want to find out, is there a period that you can say, okay, let's say of remission? So if it is that, because I have a friend that has been going through some serious depression over a breakup, and sometimes, you know, everything seems to be okay. And then out of the blue, you hear, well, you know, I can't wait to die, or which is was all over, my life has no meaning. And I was wondering, is there a period that you can say, okay, this has been dealt with and this is no longer exist, or is it always going to be an underlying condition?
It will always be an underlying condition if the person doesn't get the type of help that they need or they aren't removed from the situation. But remember, we don't want to really look at suicide as a response to stress, because suicide is not a normal response to stress. So if it is that we say, okay, she's in a stressful situation now, so that's why she feels suicidal. If we remove the situation, maybe. But this any sort of attempt or expression of the want to end one's own life should be taken very seriously as a mental health issue. And they should get the proper help for that, right? Because there could be many underlying causes.
Oh.
So I would like to find out, because like I know some young people, they confide in each other and they will tell their friends those same things Curtis were talking about, you know, they would want to kill themselves and they would just call their friends saying that, one friend in particular. And when they say those things, the friend will encourage them as not a young person, encouraging them. And after that, they would feel better about themselves. But do you think it's something that their friends should tell their parents about?
Yes. So we don't take chances with suicide. That's it. Yes. So when somebody makes a serious statement about wanting to end their lives, a child alone is not equipped. While you might be equipped, yes, in some way to give some encouragement to your parent because they listen to you, there may come that day that they don't, and you are not equipped to truly properly assess that they are safe, right? So certainly tell your parents, tell somebody, try to get your friend to get help. Try to get your friend to tell somebody, but don't just leave it to chance.
It's something that
Is it
very critical.
at times, you will see some very pretty, beautiful young ladies saying to their peers, they don't find it pretty enough, they don't find it beautiful enough. How can how can we advise how can we advise parents to help them in that situation? With that low self-esteem, and it's really shocking because you would look at them and you'd be like, you are so gorgeous, and within themselves they would be telling their friends they don't find it pretty, and so go through the depression, and it's mind-blowing, you know.
Well, I would be curious firstly as to where those ideas about themselves have stemmed from. Has it stemmed from the home circle? Has it stemmed from outside the home circle? Has it stemmed from social media? Where has it come from before you could actually know exactly well how we're supposed to really tackle this? And the thing about it, no matter how much someone on the outside feels about somebody else's looks or beings or achievements, it doesn't change how they feel, right? They have to feel that. And sometimes kids internalize negative messages, or they look up to people who don't look like them, and they idealize that as a standard of beauty. And because they don't match that, it becomes a big issue for them.
I have a question.
Sure.
So in terms of your practice, have you ever come across a situation where you would say, for a fact that suicide or depression was linked to like spiritual issues?
I can't say that because so that is not necessarily the line of training that I will work in a scientific
Well, I know this is taking you out of your training, right?
It is. So
right,
and I try not to
from
impose
your experience.
Yes.
Beyond your training.
What I can say with regards to spirituality is that it often helps. So someone might be going through something because of trauma or something that's happening in their physical environment or their emotional environment, their relationship with their parents, etc. And the fact that they have this spiritual connection that gives them strength and endurance, it actually helps. So a lot of people who do contemplate suicide, who are very spiritual, tend to say, well, this might be something that I want, but I think about it, but I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to, I want to live according to the Bible and according to God. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because of that. So, but the underlying message is that they're desperately unhappy and they're desperately hopeless and they need help with that. So in terms of spiritual, I encourage them to use, if you bring it, I encourage you to use that and to hold closer to that. And to kind of give yourself that strength to go through.
So Kelly, there's one thing that you said that interests me. Not only one. Sorry about that.
I
The
have
thing
a
about it
friend
is that if you
from
are
Australia recently.
suicidal, or
His
if you've
niece
ever been suicidal,
committed suicide. She was attending university, very, very brilliant child, always bubbly. And so her parents had no idea if she was going through depression or what. All they were told is that she came home, packed. She said to them she's going somewhere, and she drove to a hotel and she killed herself.
Yeah. Oh, no.
And this person always had a smile, always was welcoming, loving, and You know, so this happened last week, so they are really distraught right now.
Yes.
What could we say to that family listening?
Huh. You know, a lot of times when things like this happen, people, just as we're doing, try to look for signs, try to look for what did I miss or what did I do. Parents tend to blame themselves for things that their children do, whether it results in suicide or some sort of failure of something or some sort of mental health issues. Parents look to themselves a lot and try and start living with that sort of guilt. And the thing about it is that quite a lot of us, not well, a lot of us, but a lot of people aren't equipped, don't have the information to really know what they're supposed to be looking for. You know, and a lot of times people who are thinking of suicide, they don't tell people because they don't want to be stopped and they know that their families will support them and stop them, and that's exactly what they try to avoid. So, you know, I would say to be wary if you know that those thoughts come, those negative thoughts of guilt and what did I do and what could I have done better come, be wary of letting that consume you, you know, and just learn from it, be a voice for it, you know, so that other people or the parents or the children could not go through this. Because look at how already that story might have inspired a forum like this and others. You understand that child's journey, and we don't really know what the underlying cause of the suicide was. If it was some sort of impulse issue, if it was some sort of mental health issue, or some trauma that had occurred that her family knew nothing about. Well, I don't know, right? So the most I can say is what I just said. But Curtis, you were asking me a question just now. What was it?
It was about having had suicidal thoughts or attempts, right? You're saying that that is not a normal response to stress, so that it is a signal of an underlying psychological issue.
Yes, more times than
Right. And so sometimes we try to treat with the situation by changing the circumstances around the individual.
yes.
So, you know, if the child is depressed in a home or something like that, you remove the child from the area, and it seems to work. But what you're saying is that they still need to treat the underlying condition.
Yes. What had gotten that child to that place? Is there any residual trauma? We don't just let residual trauma fester, right? It also shows that that child then, since we're talking about children or adults, whoever it is, wasn't really equipped with a good way to cope with stress. And I mean, we're using stress, you know, I mean, if it's a home situation, we can use the words probably abuse or whatever it actually is, domestic violence, whatever it is, right? Bullying, even at home you get bullied. So whatever it is, that individual was not equipped to cope, either emotionally or intellectually, or just having the ideas of what to do, didn't feel supported, like they had a social support network, or they felt so worthless or hopeless because of what had been happening to them or happening around them, that they didn't feel that their life mattered that much, or that they could actually contribute more to anything, and they should just escape. So the based on that, you know, just to start, I would say that at very least we would want to help them not fall into that category, into that being an idea or a way of coping another time.
So even though the situation has changed and let's say the symptoms are no longer present,
Yes.
because you will not see the sadness or the isolation, so the symptoms may no longer be present.
Yeah.
We still need to look out, because there might be triggers if there is a situation that's not dealt with.
Yes, and no doubt they may and probably would be in a much better place, and you may never hear of suicide again, but particularly if they made attempts, you want to know that whatever it was that was, and that's the thing. I'm making this is a big generalization, because there are different things, different reasons that people reach to that stage. right? And the different reasons would leave different issues behind, right? Um, you have job loss, you have abuse, you have trauma, you have loss of a child, you have so many different things. And so it really depends a lot on what was happening to the person and to know what it means. But so for some people, they may
How
not.
about if it was,
If it
how
was,
about if it was a teenager
yes.
and they had a breakup? Because people were wondering, with my colleague there, they probably never saw, but you don't know if it was a breakup and they were trying to deal with it on their own,
Yes.
and something like that.
And so, well, again, even for teenagers, suicide is not a normal response to a breakup. So there's something else that's going on. Even if it's that the child has not learned how to cope with disappointment and heartache and stress, or that they've been exposed to suicide in their family or in their environment, and they see it as an option, or they really, whereas somebody would get really sad and really down and feel like they can't deal with the breakup, but they get really depressed because there may have been an underlying issue with depression before the breakup. So that just sort of sends them over the edge, right? So somebody who you notice because of a breakup starts talking like that, especially if they start attempting or self-harming, then certainly I would continuously say we take all suicide attempts and suicide threats seriously. We are better safe than sorry. And another thing that I should say too is that a lot of people tend to be afraid to talk about suicide, to ask somebody directly if they feel like they want to end their lives, because people tend to think that if I ask, I'll be putting the idea in their heads. But I think you would hardly likely find somebody who you say, do you think of suicide? And they say, well, what is a suicide? People know what suicide is. And what it does instead is let them know that, hey, this person is open to talking about this thing that I'm scared to talk about. And this person is seeming calm and interested in talking about the big S word. Maybe I can talk to them. And sometimes just having that talk, just having that open forum, that person listen and be open to those thoughts and those feelings is enough to settle that person quite a lot.
Yeah, I think a lot of times the talking about suicide makes people very uncomfortable. And I remember there was a show a couple of years ago where these teenagers talking about the reasons that they committed suicide, and it had a lot of negative feedback because everybody was saying, you probably know it, 13 Reasons.
I heard of it. I never watched it, but I know
seen it. But I've heard of it. But the thing about it is that people were very uncomfortable with young people talking about suicide. And the thing is, I don't think that it's encouraging suicide, but what it does is that it made people aware of the conversation. And sometimes people, they are really afraid to mention it. Anika had some issues where someone close to her committed suicide and she was still traumatized because of it. And so it makes the forum, so we have discussions like these, where you can talk about the signs and talk about what we can do to help.
Yeah, because suicide is quite a taboo topic, even now, even today in 2020, for a lot of people. It's, as you said, it's a scary thing to talk about, and people tend to feel like, how dare you feel that way? Why must you feel, what nonsense is that? And dismiss it, and that is the worst way to deal with something like that, because people's feelings are valid, whether you want to agree with it or not, whether you like it or not, whether it makes you comfortable or uncomfortable. They feel what they feel, and your discomfort doesn't change that. That it doesn't, right?
It is, and a lot of times in the church forum, it is not discussed at all because you don't want anybody to feel that you're so weak, that. But there was an incident where Elijah felt, well, the Bible didn't say suicidal, but he felt that his life was over. He felt that his life had no meaning. and he was just waiting for God to kill him. And that is a thing that we normally just skip across, you know, talk about just have faith, but it is something that we need to look at what causes this deep depression that you feel that there's no more purpose for your life.
Yes. Yeah.
I totally agree. And I like what you said. Even though we may feel as though suicide is something that's taboo, I mean, we can't deny the fact that suicide is attacking us. It's making itself known from all fronts. I mean, if you even look at the news recently, somebody like Robin Williams committed suicide. Somebody that his job is to make people laugh. We look at somebody recently again like Kate Spade. I mean, as a designer, you know, and she was somebody that people would think had everything going for her. And then there was this other really, really popular DJ. And I can't remember his name, but I know that he also committed suicide.
The guy from Linkin Park, the rock singer.
Another singer. He did like more like techno music kind of thing. I can't remember.
Okay, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
I think it was something with an Avicii. I think his name is Avicii.
There are actually more that you're not naming that I'm thinking.
Correct. There are so much more that we're not naming, which means that even though we may think suicide is a taboo thing, suicide is just it's
very real.
Making itself known. Yeah. And if I could talk about, I mean, I'm certainly not a clinical psychologist, right? But I could talk about my own experience, and I remember.
Right, I have a voice note. That I want to play here from caller.
You're gonna go ahead with it now?
You're hearing it?
Okay.
You're hearing it?
No.
No.
The mic is coming through with feedback.
I put my comments on pause.
Well, I'm wondering if you should go ahead while she's organized.
But I put my comments on pause, girl.
Okay, right. I don't think she's hearing.
Okay, you are on mute, Madonna.
This is cracking up in the corner there.
I don't know what that sign language with one finger.
So what happened was, right?
Okay.
If I played it, you all would get feedback. So I had to take off the thing and put it on. So I'll play it now, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Tell me if you're all hearing it.
So you put it on here already?
You hearing it?
No.
Very mildly.
I'll get feedback.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
Mads?
Okay, so
all right. So the person wanted to find out.
Right.
Okay, so he wanted to find out how could people say they love people when they don't treat them good. So he probably would have had suicidal thoughts. So he's saying, how could people say they love people and yet still treat them bad when everybody around? So I don't know if he goes through depression because of that. That's generally the gist of it.
The way people treat people has a lot to do with oftentimes how they have been treated themselves, how they've learned to treat people and to behave in relationships, what they've learned to expect from others. So somebody might tell you that they love you and they may act in ways that you don't receive love or that you don't consider to be something that somebody does when they're in love or when they love you, but that person may not have the insight to realize that their behaviors are toxic, or they may not care. And sometimes it comes down to looking for red flags and choosing, seeing signs in people that they may not align with you, as you say. You may not be equally yoked. They may not have the same values that you do. They may not care about the same things or know how to take care of other people's emotions, be emotionally intelligent, and so on. So again, this is very general because I don't know the person's specific experience. So just generally speaking, I'd say, values are different, upbringing is different, people's own issues, personalities, and mental health issues are different. And sometimes we take that out and we project it and we give it to other people and feel the brunt of it. Yeah.
So in
Madonna,
closing,
can I say something?
Tell us, how can we, as friends, as brothers, as sisters, identify someone that may be suicidal? Just generally, because we aren't professionals, but to notice that change in behavior and that type of thing.
So I think a key thing is withdrawal, but you have some obvious signs. So I told you earlier, there's some signs, different changes in behaviors, thoughts, and emotions, right? But then you have some signs that are more obvious. If a person suddenly starts putting things in place to take care of pets and to take care of dependents, whether it's parents or kids, if they start selling and giving away their things, or they are actually saying things like, boy, I really don't believe I could be loved, or I don't believe I belong here, or I don't believe that this world has anything to offer me, or I would be better off there. Those are some of the obvious signs that this person is planning something or considering something. And that's when you come in and you ask, I listen to what you've been saying, and it sounds a lot like somebody who might be, unhappy with life and, maybe considering ending their life. Is that you? Are you considering ending your life? Have you ever thought of that? And then let the person tell you A or nay. Yeah.
Madonna, can I say something? Madonna, you hearing me?
But I really want to thank you. I know that it's beyond your bedtime.
I don't think she's hearing me. Madonna, you hearing me?
And, Nikki has a question. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Madonna, you wouldn't believe how long I was trying to say something. Woo! All right.
Go.
Thank you. It was right after Curtis' point, and he was saying that, the church's suicide is something that's kind of taboo in the church. Yeah. And Kelly, I don't really expect you to agree with me because this may be like out of the bounds of your training. Yeah. But I was saying from my experience, I personally had a friend who was having some serious issues with suicide, and her sister was also in another country, and that person was committed to a mental institute. Okay. So there were issues in the family, and she called me and she said, well, I'm having such and such an issue. And I said, well, girl, come, let's pray with you. And she came, we prayed for her, and she received deliverance from that issue that she was facing. So what I want to say is that, I hear what you say about it being taboo in the church, but that has not been my experience in the church. In the church, I have seen people actually receiving deliverance and being set free from suicide, from depression, and different types of anxiety and different things that we would class under mental illness. Because a lot of times, from my experience, and I firmly believe it because this is what I have experienced and seen, is that a lot of these things are related to demonic influences and demonic oppression. And a lot of times when we try to treat it, I know that's the science you learn, and you're a doctor of clinical psychology, right? And that's what you learn, and that's what that's what you will talk about, right? Mm-hmm. But what I know is that people can be set free. And a lot of times when we treat people, we tend to treat them for life. You listen to these ads about, if you feel depression, take this medication and experience these side effects. And people end up being on medication for the rest of their life. When really, where the church is, that the church wants to set people free. That's the work of the church. And I have seen it in cases of suicide and depression and mental disease.
Well, the aim is not to have people in treatment for life, especially for
I know, but anxiety. I'm not saying that's the aim.
Yeah, no, so we don't treat people for life, right? We are available
right.
to support you for the rest of your life as long as we are alive and functioning, right? But that doesn't mean that I will want you to be my client. till you're old and gray and you're still experiencing depression. That is always not the case of psychology.
Understood.
But depression is chronic. Now, everything that looks like depression is not necessarily depression. Remember, mental, just as much as you believe that diabetes and cancer exist, mental illnesses exist, and we cannot minimize that, because that's part of what prevents people from getting help, because people start doubting, well, maybe I don't have an illness. And the thing with something like depression or anxiety, we have, and even psychosis, we have these preliminary, so to speak, symptoms, and then we have things going on, and then when we don't deal with it and we don't nip it in the bud, it becomes chronic, and once it's chronic, we live with it. And there is a neurological, a brain-based basis or expression of mental illnesses. We didn't dream this up. This is science. This is medicine.
I agree.
Right? So but that's to say, not everything that looks like, not every depression is a symptom. Anxiety is a normal emotion. It's not an illness. So I can be depressed for a period because I've lost my job, or somebody just died, my dog just died, or I'm anxious because I've been out of work for a while. And yes, I can get the social support. I can turn to my spiritual healing and my spiritual strength to help me through that period. But if I truly have a mental illness like depression, more times than not, and I'm never going to talk like I know everything, but perhaps somebody with a true clinical depression could have gotten out of it from church and prayer. But it's just like the miracles that happen when somebody has cancer and the cancer goes through prayer. Then it will come like that. But it's not a matter that you could just go and say, well, you don't need to treat any mental illnesses, just go and pray. So, so if you receive a miracle, then that's great. But sometimes the little extra treatment might.
One of the things I always say is that I believe truly that all healing comes from God. Whether it is that God uses a doctor, whether it is he uses medication, whether it is whatever it is, I give God the credit for my healing.
There you go.
Whatever channel he chooses to use. Yeah. And if it is that we have people that are able to teach me to deal with my situation, because sometimes, if you tell somebody, well, you shouldn't feel this way, what happens is that they are going to mask the way they feel around you.
Exactly.
Right? Yes. And so I believe in, as I said, everything good comes from God. Right? Every good and perfect gift comes from God. And if it is that God chooses to use the psychologist, the pastor, the counselor, whatever he chooses to get me out, I'm going to give him glory, but I'm going to use every avenue available to me to get help.
Sometimes it's about getting the tools to help yourself, whatever that is, whether it's social support, whether it's spiritual support, whether it's medicine, whether it's counseling, whatever it is, the tools are. Sometimes it's as simple as somebody telling you, this is the way you cope with things like this. This is the way you communicate to have a better relationship. Sometimes it's that simple. You know?
All right, and I have one last question. Someone WhatsApp, and they said, if someone is seeking attention, such people, that kind of attention to themselves, then that person could be suicidal. They could attempt to get that attention they need. And if they don't get the attention needed, then suicide can happen. Also, they're asking if someone withdraws, that's a final result. And this person said they're talking from experience. So I don't know if they knew someone who was seeking that attention, they didn't get it, and committed suicide. And they said they started to withdraw, so that was like the final result, and they're talking from experience.
Suicide is not suicide is not a normal way to seek attention. We could do lots of things to seek attention. We could ask for it, we could pout, we could break something, we could stop talking to something. We could do lots of things to seek attention. not necessarily kill ourselves or hurt ourselves. If somebody thinks that hurting themselves is an option to get attention, then we're not looking deeper. There is something else that's going on. Why would this person choose something so drastic to get attention, right? And yes, withdrawal is one of the signs that somebody is really struggling with something. So this sounds to me like this person was really struggling and actually trying to reach out, cry out for help in the way that they knew how. And that way might have seemed very strange to other people. It might have seemed like attention seeking, but they probably weren't sure how else to do it, right? And so again, it's not a normal thing, something so final just to get attention as to kill yourself. Why was
Kelly, what advice would you give us in this time of isolation?
So now that's my final word.
Oh, let me just ask her one thing, Madonna. Please, you hear me?
You know, and I think people will take a closer look now as to those that are around them. And
I think I just want to ask one last question.
You know, for us to really go deeper,
she's not hearing
when
you.
we see a friend smiling and, you know, as the Holy Spirit to guide us, so we can see and we can know if, you know, that friend is not themselves today. Although they'd smile, it might be shorter, it might be a longer smile when you say hi and, you know, as if they're okay and let us really show that care and concern. I know that now it's harder because of, you know, being locked down, you know, being at home and not having that physical contact. And I'm saying, and we were talking about this with our group, you know, you could make that phone call as well. You know, yes, we Zoom a lot and everything, but, you know, you can make that phone call and have that other interaction, do more video calls then, ask them if it's that a time, set aside a time for that, you know, as well. So that, you know, we can see that expression and interact as well, best way we could, you know, with each other. So I want to thank you again for taking the time to share.
Sure, no problem.
And hope we could connect earlier.
Next time, no problem, anytime.
I know that it's past, but I really appreciate you taking the time, you know, to be with us and to enlighten us.
This is cracking up.
As because she completely.
I see Curtis laughing like
anybody. All right, guys. Well, you all have a great night. Curtis, I think
enjoy evening.
The question just now. That was a really good roundup right there.
We will leave it until the other time that we meet at some point in time.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Everybody. Good night, Kelly. Good night, Curtis.
Bye. Such a
pleasure.
Bye, Nika.
Bye, Kelly.
Bye.
Bye.